Moneylender's daily life. It was a long time ago, still in the middle of the Showa period, when the streets were usually full of gory yakuza. I was working for a company affiliated with one of the gangs. I was an apprentice there, and there was a gang leader, a young boss, senior members, and a scary 30-year-old brother named Kanzaki who taught me how to do my job. The reason why I joined this place is a long story, but I joined a biker gang in high school and was so active that I didn't have the brains to get a job at a normal place, so I had no choice but to join this place through an introduction from a senior. I usually do simple things like cleaning and chores in the office, and answering the phone in the office when everyone is out. But perhaps what makes it different from a normal company is that when I couldn't do it or when I made a mistake, the way they get angry at me is so bad that it's unusual. Have you ever read a comic book with yakuza in it? There is an office, and there is usually a glass ashtray on the desk. It is usually used to beat up anyone who gets in the way. But even if you get punched, you must never make excuses, no matter how unreasonable it is. The superior is always right. You're not being reasonable. I'm going to give you instructions for a while, and you'll do as I tell you, okay? The one who says this to me is Mr. Kanzaki, who is teaching me how to do my job. He looks scary, but he tells me exactly what to do. But there is a good reason for this. If I do something wrong, Mr. Kanzaki will be jointly and severally punished. To be honest, we are both scared of each other because the responsibility of the subordinate is the responsibility of the boss. My main duties are collecting money from creditors, collecting money from cooperating firms, protection money, and various other things. The work varies from office to office, but our office is not that large, so the monthly quota was not that heavy. When the cleaning and other chores were starting to take shape, Mr. Kanzaki said, "Hey, you're going to start working at the site today." I was excited inside at that time. I could finally do my job. Today's work was to go to the customers who were in arrears and collect the money. Incidentally, this was in the days when exorbitant interest rates such as Taichi and Togo were still prevalent. Those who cannot pay back their debts are so deeply in debt that they really cannot pay them back. But this must be collected by any means necessary. I don't know about other places, but our company has a charge system. Mr. Kanzaki has his own customers, and other senior staff have their own customers. When a customer calls me and I respond to the call, or when I find a customer by myself, that person becomes my customer. When a clan leader or a young boss introduces you to someone and says, "Lend him money," the person you were in charge of at that time becomes your customer. In other words, if you fail to collect money from your own customers every month, you will be severely punished. Today, two of Mr. Kanzaki's clients are behind in their payments, so he is going to collect. The first case is Mr. Tanaka, pseudonym, male, 50s, who lives in a shabby apartment. I press the doorbell, but there is no answer. Is he not home? Mr. Kanzaki said, "No way. Wait for me," and borrowed a key from the landlord. In the old days, things were a lot looser. When I unlocked the key and opened the room, I found it was in what is now called a trashy house. Mr. Kanzaki entered the room with his feet in the dirt and called me, "Hey, over here. Look," he called me. When I looked, I saw a man of medium build and medium height lying in the garbage, obviously drunk. Suddenly, Mr. Kanzaki grabbed Mr. Tanaka by the ear and said, Hey, man. Are you kidding me?" Mr. Tanaka woke up in a panic, got down on his knees, and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any money. I don't have any money," he said at the outset. "Oh. Then why are you drinking and sleeping in the middle of the day, you fuck?" And an angry shout echoed through the apartment. The end result of alcoholism, you could say. He seems to be an uncle in a negative loop, who gets a day job, but spends it all on alcohol that day. Naturally, his debt to us continues to grow day by day. If I just pay the interest, I can get by this month. Mr. Kanzaki, how much money do you have now? Mr. Tanaka, it's Chuhaku Niju Go Yen. Mr. Kanzaki said, go to this site right now, I'll give you 2 days to earn your death wish. And handed him a map of somewhere. Mr. Tanaka, now. Mr. Kanzaki, of course. The deposit date was yesterday. If you can't get the money here, what do you think will happen if you can't come up with the money? At this point, the air suddenly became tense. I don't know what will happen. Mr. Tanaka said, I understand. And ran out of the room. Oh, for heaven's sake, next. I was so overwhelmed by the power of the real collection that I had never seen before that I could do nothing but stand there the whole time. But I thought he was a bad guy in his 50s with 925 yen in his pocket. The second case is Ms. Kondo, pseudonym, female in her 80s. I rang the doorbell of her apartment, but she didn't answer. Mr. Kanzaki said, this guy is seriously not home. I know where he's going, let's go. I said, yes. I followed him to a large pachinko parlor. Mr. Kanzaki said, here, you wait outside, and went inside. After a while, Mr. Kanzaki grabbed an old lady by the neck, who was so thin she could hold it in one hand, and brought her in. I said, what, you don't think this old lady is? Ms. Kanzaki, it's Kondo. She's such a normal grandma that she doesn't look like she owes us money. She was so honky-tonk that I shouted in my heart, Kondo Kanzaki-san? Oh, is today the day you pay me back? Ms. Kanzaki, grandma, it was yesterday. Her manner of speaking was very calm, totally different from Tanaka-san's earlier. Kondo-san said, oh, I'm sorry, here. And produced an envelope. Mr. Kanzaki said, I checked carefully. Next time, don't be late on the repayment date. After checking the contents, Kanzaki-san released Kondo-san. Thank God, Kondo-san had prepared the money properly. I patted my chest in relief. Kanzaki-san said, at this rate, Grandma will have to live until she's 120 years old. I said, how much do you think she's drinking and playing pachinko with how much she owes? I only accompanied Kanzaki to 2 collections today, but I found out that there is a problem with those who lend at a high price, but there is also a problem with those who borrow at a high price. On the way home, I was driving the car because I was also Mr. Kanzaki's chauffeur. By the way, you are not allowed to do any sudden movements here. Sudden steering, sudden acceleration, etc. We must not let our guard down at all while driving. An accident is worth all the deaths. When we turned onto a clear road, Mr. Kanzaki said to me as he blew on his cigarette, hey, have you ever borrowed money? I was only 22 years old. I had no experience of borrowing money, so I answered, no. Mr. Kanzaki said, I see. Don't borrow from a place like us by mistake. His voice was smoky, but I could understand, this was the time for some friendly advice. I had a question I really wanted to ask, so I talked to Mr. Kanzaki. I said, by the way, Tanaka-san, if you can't come up with the money in 2 days, what will happen? Mr. Kanzaki said, what do you mean, we'll sell? He replied as if it was a matter of course. I said, oh, is that as labor? Mr. Kanzaki, no, that depends on the buyer. Honestly, it depends on the guy who bought it. Tanaka, you're in your 50s, right? Mr. Kanzaki, well, there will be some kind of work for about 30 years. 30 years, is it that far away from being paid off? Mr. Kanzaki, we don't want it to be paid off. The total amount he owes us is not that big, so we will blast him and make him go to work to pay the interest. If that doesn't work, we'll sell it for the amount he owes. Mr. Kanzaki, there are people who buy those things. I'd be happier if I could keep paying interest at home and live even 1 day longer. I went to see a guy who sold one a long time ago. But not that one. I said, hey. I was too scared to ask any more questions. A few months later, Mr. Tanaka's name had disappeared from the collection list. I'm Mr. Kanzaki. Mr. Tanaka is no way. Mr. Kanzaki, oh, it's no way. Mr. Kanzaki said, my clients have decreased. I'm going into business today because I'm making less money. Yes. I was able to get out in a few years, but the number of people who have disappeared from the list in the intervening years is in the double digits. I wonder where those people are now. I don't know now, but I think there are some things in the world that are better left unacknowledged. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end.